Funding our own demise. How U.S. tax dollars have been used to depopulate. So we've all heard about USAID. And the USAID policy paper, Population Assistance, going back to 1982, talks about how our tax dollars have been used to pay for abortions and other sterilizations. USAID policy governing the use of agency funds for sterilization provides that USAID funds can only be used to support voluntary sterilization activities if the following 6 conditions are met. Some of these conditions has to be voluntary. In 2016, the U.S. government led a program that forcibly sterilized thousands of Peruvian women. An unsettling aspect of the entire Peruvian campaign is the involvement of the U.S. government. The specific agencies that were involved in Peru's sterilization campaign were the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, and the Nippon Foundation, a Japanese nonprofit. It is known that UNFPA donated $10 million for the forced sterilization campaign. Peru. Fujimori government's forced sterilization policies violated women's rights, UN committee says in landmark ruling. This was in 2024. Forced sterilization haunts Peruvian women decades on. This is a testimony from one woman. At least 100 women from my area went to the clinic that day. We were promised medicine. A lorry took us to the clinic. We all arrived innocent and happy. Then we heard screams and I just ran, but the doors were locked, so I could not escape. I was 3 months pregnant. The health center staff knew this. They still went ahead. When I woke up, I was sterilized against my will. In 2022, the Pro-Life Caucus, the Congressional Pro-Life Caucus, reported on federal funding for abortion advocates from 2019 to 2021. The report showed that during that time, Planned Parenthood Federation of America received $1.78 billion, with $1.53 billion of this funding coming from combined federal and state funds obtained through 3 federal programs: Medicaid, CHIP, and Medicare. International Planned Parenthood Federation got $2.03 million. MSI Reproductive Choices, $1.35 million. 4 domestic regional organizations received $107.74 million. Total funding for abortion advocates, $1.89 billion. Note, federal funding received underestimates funding received. It does not capture subgrants, subcontracts, or funding disbursed through the states. Now, one of the largest advocates for abortion was Margaret Sanger. In her book, Woman and the New Race, she is quoted, "Birth control itself, often denounced as a violation of natural law, is nothing more or less than the facilitation of the process of weeding out, of preventing the birth of defectives or of those who will become defectives." And evidently, she figured that she and those who follow her were the arbiters of what's defective or who will become defective. And there's a reason why Planned Parenthood facilities were located all too often in the ghettos and in near projects where blacks and Hispanics and other undesirables lived. Following Margaret Sanger, in 1967, there was the proposed measures to reduce fertility by universality or selectivity of impact in the U.S. And you are going to be stunned and realize this has been playing out since 67 decades. I'm personally 67 right now, so I would have been 10 years old at that time. So for 57 years this has been playing out. First was social constraints. Restructure the family A. Postpone or avoid marriage. Alter the image of the ideal family size. Compulsory education of children. Encourage increased homosexuality. Educate for family limitations. Fertility control agents in the water supply. Encourage women to work. You would have to be blind not to realize how many of these things have been pushed on the American people. Free love, free sex. This came out in the 60s and 70s. Avoid marriage. Let's give you birth control, which is also when abortions started as birth control. Encouragement of homosexuality. That's all over in our face now. This is the one that gets me. Fertility control in the water supply. Next, economic deterrence and incentives. See if any of these sound familiar. Modify tax policies. A. Substantial marriage tax. B. Child tax. C. Tax married more than single. Remove parents' tax exemption. Additional taxes on parents with more than one or two children in school. Eliminate paid maternity leave or benefits. Eliminate children's or family allowances. Bonuses for delayed marriage and greater child spacing. Pensions for women of 45 with less than certain number of children. Eliminate welfare payments after first two children. Chronic depression. Require women to work and provide few child care facilities. Limit or eliminate publicly financed medical care, scholarships, housing, loans, and subsidies to families with more than a certain number of children. Then there were the social controls. Compulsory abortion of out-of-wedlock pregnancies. Compulsory sterilization of all who have 2 children, except for a few who would be allowed 3. The elite. Confine childbearing to only a limited number of adults. Stock certificate permits for children. Housing policies. Discouragement of private home ownership. Stop awarding public housing based on family size. Measures predicated on existing motivation to prevent unwanted pregnancy. Payments to encourage sterilization. Payments to encourage contraception. Payments to encourage abortion. Abortion and sterilization on demand. Allow harmless contraceptives to be distributed non-medically. Improve contraceptive technology. Make contraception truly available and accessible. Improve maternal health care with family planning as a core element. For years, I've been hearing about how terrible China is for their one-child policy and what they're doing. Under the one-child policy, the Communist Party, by its own estimation, prevented over 400 million births and carried out over 336 million abortions. More children were aborted under the one-child policy than the entire population of the United States. That's from the Population Research Institute. Here's the testimony of a woman at a congressional hearing in 2009. As soon as I was taken out of the van, I saw hundreds of pregnant moms there, all of them just like pigs in the slaughterhouse. The room was full of moms who had just gone through a forced abortion. Some moms were crying, some moms were screaming, and one was rolling on the floor in unbearable pain. Then it was my turn. It was the end of the world for me. When the surgery was finished, the nurse showed me a part of my baby's bloody foot with her tweezers. The UNFPA, funded by USAID and your tax dollars and my tax dollars, was complicit in China's population. I'm going to tell y'all something. As Americans, we've already killed over 60 million babies. That's more a population than in Canada, in Denmark, and many European nations. We've killed that many in our own land. That blood cries out. God is going to judge the United States unless we repent as a nation. We will be judged. He judged Israel for their sacrifice of babies on the altars of Baal. He will do the exact same thing to the United States. And don't think for a minute because Trump cut funding to the UN agency over forced abortion support back in 2017 that that's going to stop the judgment on America. Population control is big, it's satanic, it's demonic, and the United States has been exporting it through USAID. 1 in 3 Indian women has been sterilized. 1/3 did not give their informed consent. Many of them were sterilized through vaccinations perpetrated by the Gates Foundation. Namibian women were sterilized without consent, judge rules. This has happened all over the world, especially in third world nations. Now, if you wonder where this whole agenda for depopulation comes from, here's an example that appeared in Georgia in the United States several decades ago. It was called the Georgia Guidestones, and it had all of these tablets were in different languages. But one of the things they espoused was reducing the population of the world, Earth, to 500 million. It espoused many different ways to have the perfect world. The interesting thing is, back in July 2022, suddenly part of it was destroyed. Authorities say it was a bomb. Others believe it was a lightning strike, but whatever it was, it came down. Part of it did. And so, for safety's sake, they demolished the entire display. And so it is no more. Personally, I kind of believe it was the hand of God. It is not up to man to determine how many people the world can sustain. However, this is exactly what Bill Gates and those of his ilk are doing. They're trying to reduce the population, and they're using vaccines, contraceptives, and now remote control contraceptives, and Planned Parenthood, abortion, to do this. And Planned Parenthood was the premier vehicle for eugenicists when it was created. These 39 companies donate directly to Planned Parenthood. The most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. This is from Margaret Sanger, the woman who was behind the startup of Planned Parenthood. The most urgent problem today is how to limit and discourage the overfertility of the mentally and physically defective. A marriage license shall in itself give husband and wife only the right to common household and not the right to parenthood. This is what she wrote in 1934. This was the proposed baby code. Marriage license shall in itself give husband and wife only the right to a common household and not the right to children. We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And this was from Dr. Clarence Gamble in 1939. And in case y'all aren't thanking God yet that Hillary Clinton did not become president in 2017, she was rewarded by Planned Parenthood. We all better be thanking God that President Donald Trump has expanded his executive order defunding International Planned Parenthood and USAID. I, for one, am thankful that RFK Jr. is going to be trying to make America healthy again. Figure out where the American taxes are going when it comes to health, what the medical community and the big pharma has been doing, because without it, America is in trouble and the world is in trouble. The plan is to destroy over 7 billion people. Think about it.